presentation, proudly presented by Nexen. Thank you to our judges, Scott Chalker from Nexen, Gail Gall from Nexen, Julie Goss from the Richard Ivey School of Business, Quan Lee from BHP Bilton, Brian Peacock representing CPA, and lastly Victor Thomas from Aspen Medical Canada. Competitors will have a maximum of 20 minutes to present. Immediately following the presentation, judges will have a total of 5 minutes for questions. I will show time cards at various intervals to indicate the remaining time, and will stop any speaker who exceeds the maximum time limit. No questions, comments, cell phones, or picture taking will be permitted from the audience. The audience will only be permitted to applaud the following the question and answer period. The audience is banned from any material that bears the name or symbol of a competing university. We ask that the audience exit the room immediately following the question and answer period. Competitors may begin when you are ready.
Good afternoon, Yancoal Board of Advisors and Directors. My name is Ryan, and I'm here today with my colleagues Spencer and Regan. Right now, your company, Yancoal, is operating in a world of incredible opportunity. However, that opportunity is offset by risk and volatility within the market that you currently operate in. It is our job as a consultancy firm to provide you with a flexible and strategic recommendation that will position you for long-term growth and diversification, but also a strategy that's mindful of your current core competencies and your current strengths. Right now, I have up on the screen the results that our strategic recommendation is going to provide to you today. Firstly, Yancoal Australia will be the world's 9th largest pure-play coal producer and the largest in Australia. Secondly, you're going to have the implementation of a flexible diversification strategy. Not a strategy that is rigid, but a strategy that is flexible and mindful of the volatility of the world commodity markets. Thirdly, you're going to have further capitalization upon Yancoal's core competencies. I think it's really important to be mindful of those core competencies as we go through our presentation today and provide our recommendation to you. Now let's make it happen. Our recommendation to you today is to invest in current coal production expansion within the Australian market to position yourself for long-term portfolio diversification into the potash markets of Saskatchewan. We're going to do this today by taking you through the issues that we identify to you as a company that are the most important for your long-term strategic future. Then we're going to take you through a number of analysis methods that we undertook to get to that recommendation to really provide a backbone for that recommendation. We're going to provide the recommendation, and then Spencer's going to finish up with an implementation plan that's going to show you how we're going to make this happen, and then we're going to provide contingency planning and wrap up with the question and answer period. So at this point, I'd like to hand it off to my colleague Regan, who's going to go through our issues as well as a few of our recommendation plans.
Thank you, Ryan. So China is the second largest consumer of energy in the world. Your company is positioned to take advantage of this growth. However, while you're still focused on coal production to be your major primary focus, diversification is in your best interest. With diversification, you can bring stability and a mindful focus for the future of growth. However, the Chinese coal producers have limited domestic growth opportunities. This is because the coal production capabilities of these companies is going to be limited from the amount of coal that's going to be left over in the years to come. Secondly, Yancoal lacks experience in these new industries. Therefore, we're going to be looking at alternatives to how you can garner some of this interest and some of this capabilities from other companies who will find advantageous relationships from what your current capabilities are as a company. Lastly, you lack the financial foundation to go out alone on yourself, to go out to Saskatchewan and start your own mine. So we have to be really mindful of your financial constraints to really allow you to capitalize on the market today. So you are financially sound. You're a very profitable company, which will allow you flexibility into the future. You have capabilities and technology that really allow you to really capitalize on a very important commodity, and that's coal, for the developing world, which is really a huge need for that cheap, reliable energy that the world must get. Finally, viable partnership targets in place. You guys have proved your worth in the market. You've made a relationship with an Australian company that's allowed you to gain respect in the international market. However, you do have the inexperiences that I did allude to earlier, which we will really tie into a recommendation, allowing you to really be mindful of this drawback. As I've already talked on, lack of diversification. While you are vertically integrated, you are reliable. 96% of your profit is coming from coal revenue. Therefore, you are not diversified. We have to look at alternative measures to get out of this trap and to really look at the future and how we can really capitalize on something, a commodity, and that is potash, the gold of Canada. So what is your core competency? As Ryan said, we're going to build in a recommendation built around your strengths. Therefore, you can really capitalize on what your potential is in the future. You will be mindful that you are a coal company. So you're not going to want to get into the potash market alone because you don't have a great understanding of the technology that really makes you stand out in the coal industry. Financial analysis. You are financially sound. Your working capital is around $2.1 billion. So that huge financial investment of a mine in Saskatchewan is obviously out of the question to go out on a loan. Lack of diversification, as I alluded to, coal sales represented 90% of your revenue stream. Current ratio 2.4. Mining industry, that is economically sound. You are in a good position going forward. Now looking at the global market. Potash is a volatile production cost. These costs have to be mindful and really are huge drawbacks on how you can really build future growth scales and really gauge yourself on how you're going to really grow within an industry that has those up and down prices and also huge expenditures for developing a mine. High capital investment for development based on largely uncertain forecasts. So having 2008, 2009, just a few years back, we saw the price of commodities hit an all-time high. Then we saw a huge fall within the commodity industry, where a lot of these forecasts, a lot of these people who jumped in to the commodity market found themselves not being able to predict the future. None of us can. So this has really been mindful to our recommendation, where we're not basing our recommendation around something that we cannot forecast. We can plan for it, but it's always important to be mindful and really have that ability to kind of be flexible into the future. Now I'm going to pass it off to Brian, who's going to go over coal. Obviously the other huge important factor that your company is representing itself in the market.
Thanks a lot, Regan. So as executives and our board of directors for a coal company, I'm sure you've heard a lot about the fact that coal is not a clean energy. It's not a reliable energy source for the future of our world. That is simply not true, and you know it. There's billions of people in China right now and in developing economies that are relying on coal to provide power and electricity to their homes. You know this as a board of advisors and as a board of directors, and you need to remain mindful of that as you move forward. 70% of the world's total energy consumption is reliant on coal, and that's going to continue, and that's going to grow regardless of what many industry skeptics may say. Secondly, as I alluded to, developing countries are hungry for cheap energy, and quite frankly, many of them don't care how that energy comes. They simply want energy, and coal, especially the way that you produce it, is the best way to provide that to those people. Thirdly, China in particular, your home country, will continue to consume coal with 35% more coal consumed in 2020 than they do now. That's an incredible amount, and while oversupply may be an issue according to some analysts, we feel that that growth in demand is going to supersede the problems that oversupply may cause. China additionally is rapidly increasing their coal imports, which fits nicely with our strategic recommendation to you today. I think it's also important to look at the economics of brownfield versus greenfield expansions, which is incredibly important when you're looking at evaluating and developing a resource asset. So firstly, we believe that the current market conditions do not support greenfield expansion for companies with limited financial resources. A potash executive is recently quoted as saying that if you look at the 15-year mine life, you're going to have zero cash flows, absolutely none whatsoever, purely expenses for the first 7 years, with year 7 through 15 being where your cash flows come into play. So essentially, you're going to need double the current price for potash per ton, which we've equivalent to about $1,500 per ton, a price that has never been reached. So we feel that that is simply not economical in the current economy with that $1,500 price target per ton. Secondly, just to look at the costs of development. You are familiar with these, but I think it's very important to be mindful of the fact that an underground mine can cost, according to our information, approximately $12 billion, which is a lot of money for a company even of your size. You need to be very mindful of the economic volatility that's in place when evaluating the feasibility of a mine asset. Thirdly is the fact that there's price uncertainty due to the volatility of potash cartels. As you're very familiar with, potash cartels do experience a certain amount of volatility, and this involved with pricing of potash pricing per ton definitely is going to fluctuate largely with the status of those potash cartels. So just to take a look at our decision criteria that we use today when evaluating the different options that you have in play, which are, of course, focusing purely on coal production, focusing purely on or advancing to the Saskatchewan market immediately, or evaluating a mixture of those two. And that's firstly, we believe, number one important is capitalizing upon your internal core competencies. As Regan touched on before, you are a coal company. You know what you're doing in the industry. You have technology that has proven itself. You're safe. You're trusted amongst coal companies. That's where your strength lies, not in potash production. And that's going to tie in our recommendation with the partnerships we feel are necessary to enter the Saskatchewan market. Thirdly is the financial viability. As a consultancy firm, we always include this in one of our strategic our decision criteria, because we feel that that is ultimately the economics of this mine development is really what's important, because if it doesn't make money, it's simply not going to be economic for your company. And thirdly, the fact that we know that it's important to you to meet the world's global energy demand. There's billions of people in economically developing nations around the world who demand energy, and they demand it now. And that's important to us as you look towards the long-term future in terms of your coal development opportunities. So just to go over our recommendation again, we feel that your best recommendation is to invest in current coal production opportunities to position for long-term portfolio diversification. This is going to be done through merging Yancoal Australia with Bluechester to form the world's 9th largest pure-play coal producer and Australia's largest pure-play coal producer. This foundation is going to provide you with the financial viability through increased cash flows to focus on that long-term portfolio diversification, which may become clearer as you gain a clearer picture of the world economic markets. Secondly, we feel that it is important right now to purchase those Saskatchewan potash growth permits. We don't feel that those permits are going to be available in a few years from now, because ultimately there's a number of other Chinese companies that are evaluating this in their boardrooms as we speak today, and we feel that you need to make a move now to position yourself for that long-term growth through holding on to those permit assets. So at this point, I'd like to pass off to my colleague Spencer, who's going to go through how we're going to make this happen.
Thank you, Ryan, and thank you, Regan. One key part of this implementation, one thing that I really want to stress, some of my colleagues have alluded to a number of financial implications of this recommendation. There's one important thing. That's beyond those financial implications, we think that you are positioned to be one of the greatest energy providers in the world because you're able to do it cheaper, faster, and more importantly, safer and cleaner than your competitors. The United Nations claimed that access to electricity is one of the greatest indicators of quality of life in the world. You could be one of the world's greatest energy providers. Currently, China has over 1 billion people that need energy and need it now. So not only can you provide energy, you can provide them with quality of life. Let's look at how we're going to do that. So within this timeline, we're basically working on a 5-year to 10-year timeline because it is a long-term industry. First of all, the goal right here within your first 3 years is position for long-term portfolio diversification. Now, how are we going to do that? We want to gain financial strength and security. We want to look at other portfolio opportunities. Now, primarily, with this merger that Yancoal Australia and Gloucester can really put together, you can then, as we had said, be one of the 9th world's largest coal provider and Australia's largest. That will create your financial strength and your financial security. So under that, although we aren't going to recommend right now to expand into potash and develop mines in Saskatchewan, we feel that now is the opportunity to buy these land permits because these opportunities don't come very often. At about $375 million, that'll get you both permits, and that'll allow you that flexibility as we discussed. And then finally, this action item that we feel is very important is expanding that production capacity of your Australian-based assets. Do coal well the way you have been and continue that so you have the financial security and stability in order to provide that quality of life to people in China and eventually globally. Now, this second phase, 3 to 5 years, the goal right here is to determine the long-term feasibility of your potash investment. Now, there's a number of things that you want to do here. Potash in Saskatchewan, as my colleagues alluded to, is a highly competitive market. There's a lot of risk financially in both your entire organization. And we feel that you need to understand that risk and understand those benefits before going there. You don't want to risk everything by expanding now. You want to create that financial stability that regardless of market conditions, you can survive or expand into. So these 3 objectives here: understanding partnerships, understanding those financial risks, understanding those financial benefits, establishing that connection with Canadian stakeholders. One thing you have to be mindful of, my colleagues touched upon this and I want to stress it again, is beyond the financial implications of moving into Saskatchewan, you really need to understand that a Canadian partnership, similar to the deal that happened with Nexen, is vital to coming into Canada. You need to establish that trusted partnership so that you too can be a trusted company when you're investing in Canada. These action items, how you're going to do that, you're going to establish a Saskatchewan-based team, basically based on corporate development and awareness. Now you can start this now before you're actually building the mine, so that when the time comes for the social implications to test your trust, test their trust, and test that awareness, you've already been there, you've established it, they know who you are. And then obviously complete that feasibility, study the Saskatchewan-based mines. You know, what are the NPVs of these projects? What are the current market conditions? What are the risks and what are the benefits? Then moving into the more long-term implementation here, phase 3, the goal is specifically, as you wanted, portfolio diversification, so that you can one day be one of the largest providers of quality of life to a number of people across the world. If it's feasible, coming from the second phase, develop the Saskatchewan-based potash mines. 2 and 2 together. Explore further portfolio expansion is another thing. Portfolio expansion does not have to stop at potash, it does not have to stop at coal. There are a number of other industries you can get yourself into, whether it be nickel, copper, et cetera, that you can explore at this point in order to expand that portfolio, one thing that you really stress as being important. Then finally, you want to partner with an established mining company for development. As we said, one of the keys to coming into Canada is having a partnership with a trusted and strong Canadian company. And I'll point to that Nexen deal again. It's the success that a company has had by partnering with a Canadian company. And then obviously initial market analysis of other possible commodities, and that will kind of bring you back into an implementation that we've given you for another product. Now, with each great recommendation, there are great risks and great possibilities. One of the risks that one of my partners alluded to was oversupply. Now, yes, oversupply is an issue in China. However, because China is currently developing an oligopoly in terms of that market, that oversupply won't necessarily affect you because you are the largest supplier of Australia and the 9th largest in the world. It will primarily affect those who are not as large, who do have more financial risk and do have more invested in there. So, as we said, the probability and severity of oversupply is about medium, and we can do that through portfolio diversification. Now, there's 2 other things. There's negative public perception, which we've touched upon. There's a high probability of a Chinese-owned coal or company coming into Canada and being viewed in a negative way. And that Canadian partnership at that point is going to be vital. And that's why we suggest that you start doing that now before you start building your mine. It's that partnership that you're going to have to rely on to understand and to develop and to sustain yourself in this market. Now, that change in the resource development restrictions, basically what we mean is the change in regulations could mean that you're not able to hold on to those land assets without developing. Now, if that happens, the probability is quite low and quite medium because Saskatchewan seems to have quite stable governmental regulations and not great changes that will be happening. But if that does happen, you've got to A, develop the assets like the government decides, or sell those assets, make a profit, take a small loss. As we said, you've invested $375 million in purchasing them. However, compared to the multiples of billions that you will be investing in a development project, or perhaps getting in profits from that project, it's not a large loss to take. So in conclusion, we feel that currently you need to invest in these current coal production expansions to position for that long-term portfolio diversification. Currently, you are a great provider of coal. We can position you to not only be a great provider of coal across the world and Australia, but by diversifying in the long term, being a quality of life provider. Somebody who's able to say confidently and strongly that you provide electricity for those who need it when they need it, to provide a quality of life for them. Now, as we said, 9th largest coal producer in Australia. That is a strong financial position that you can jump off of in order to diversify, in order to become strong, and in order to expand your reach globally. The implementation of a flexible diversification strategy, that's simply, as we said, commodity markets are volatile. By having all your eggs in one basket, you are at greater risk. So this diversification, as you said, needs to start. And that's how we want to do this. Partnerships, awareness, these things are very important. And then finally, further capitalization upon Yancoal's core competencies. You are the leading technological provider of coal. You can do it cheaper and faster, but more importantly, safer and cleaner than your competitors. Now, leveraging that success and leveraging that trust will allow you to be the greatest energy provider and the greatest quality of life provider in the commodity industry. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the presentation. Question and answer period will now begin.
Taking the first one, there are a few alternatives available in Australia in terms of different opportunities, in terms of different opportunities. What made you decide, or what's your decision framework in terms of going for the goals?
I can speak to that. Essentially, yes, as you mentioned, there are a number of opportunities. Now, those opportunities are essentially acquisitions, taking over companies and expanding your reach that way. Because your goal is product diversification, portfolio diversification, you do need great financial strength. And the greatest financial strength you gain long term is through that merger. It allows you to be the greatest, strongest coal provider in Australia and 9th largest in the world. Now, from that, you can position yourself to diversify your portfolio. So it was because of a long-term strategy that we chose that merger.
I like your potash strategy. I think slow and deliberate approach makes a lot of sense. In 5 years, however, which is when the next deal would have actually good forecasting. The market will be oversupplied with potash. So my question to you is, what would make us competitive in this oversupplied environment?
I can touch upon that again. One thing with mine development, it does take multiples of years. When you look at other individuals who are considering at this point to enter into Saskatchewan for potash, a mine can take anywhere from 3 years to 5 years, and if things really don't go that well, 7 years. Now, that offset, you can then use to position yourself. You can have that position go, and then you can store potash for another couple of years. So if you start today, you have up to 7 years for the market to recover. Now, that competitiveness, we're not suggesting that you are able to compete directly with the largest mining companies in the entire world, but you can get there through this strategy by positioning yourself, financial security. You can become that. So there is that delay, there is that opportunity for it to recover.
Your strategy to partner with the Canadian company, any thoughts on that?
I think really the point of that is establishing a basis of trust with the Canadian stakeholders. So we do not feel that it would be a large company such as Potash Corp or BHP Billiton simply because we feel that they likely won't be interested in partnering with Yancoal. So yes, we do feel that it's one of those more recognized smaller companies that do have a basis of connection and trust with Canadian stakeholders, because really that's what we feel that they're bringing to this partnership in terms of the long-term view of this mine development. So we really feel that it would be a smaller one, simply largely because of the fact that we feel many of the large producers simply wouldn't be interested in producing and going into a partnership with their company. So yes, it would be a smaller to medium-sized company.
Interesting that you offer this plan, but I don't think you use the word cartel once in the whole presentation. And I think we need to talk about that. So,
Sure.
what do you thought?
So with the pricing cartels, I think we did mention it once, but we really should have touched on it a little bit more. So with the pricing cartels, they really have the power to control the price of potash. So being in Canada, it's the Canpotex, and then you have the Eastern European, Russian conglomerate that is a huge factor. So there is a substantial risk if they were to ever pull out of their agreement and oversupply the market with potash. being at 20 level, we don't feel that's a feasible thing to happen. However, our plan does build in that contingency where we still have that flexibility and we're not going forward with the greenfield project that so many other companies have. So if that does happen, which is a likelihood, or it could happen, hypothetically, you're still in a good position to really hold back until you make that huge financial investment into potash.
I can build on that as well. One thing about the Yellow River plan was mentioned that it's slow, it's deliberate, but it's stable, it's secure. Now, depending on a cartel for success or competition, we feel is unstable. It's not something we want to base our decisions on, depending on how volatile that becomes. So with the volatility of the market and those relationships, we feel that by creating that partnership and by diversifying and having that financial basis, you're not as susceptible to that volatility.
Thank you.